Hello once again, everybody. My name is Mitch. Thank you once again for tuning into the series I'm Turning 30, where I, Mitch, talk about things that have happened in my past, things that are happening now in my present, things that will happen in my future, or a mixture of all three in my journey up to turning 30. And this week, I'm going to be talking about D&D. For those unaware, D&D stands for Dungeons & Dragons. In my passion video that I posted a couple months back, I actually have the dice tray and dice that I use in the thumbnail, and they're actually right here, right next to me. You can kind of see the edge of them right here, this little box right here. That is where I keep all of my dice for Dungeons & Dragons. Now, to get into a brief explanation about Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game where you roll dice based on a character that you have previously made in order to go on some type of adventure, whether that's killing some crazy evil being, or finding a big treasure hoard, or doing your own homebrew adventure where you establish some type of crazy religion. There is a whole mixture of things and things that you can do in D&D, which is why I found it so interesting when I first started to learn about it. Now, I feel like the general perception around D&D, or what a lot of people think of it, or at least what I thought about it before I really knew about it, was you had to dress up, like cosplay for it. You had to like become whatever character you created, essentially. I thought that there was only one right way to play D&D. I thought you really had to lean into the fantasy character aspect, that there was no room for putting your own ideas and values and other things. I thought it was just fully pre-written like a video game, and that you couldn't really control how the story went, that it was very railroad-esque in terms of gameplay. I also thought it was something that you would only essentially start doing when you just ran out of other nerdy hobbies. For some reason, you fell out of love with doing other hobbies. I thought D&D was like the thing that you had to commit a lot of time to, and you wouldn't be able to do basically any other hobbies. And while that's true in some cases, now that I've played it, I think a lot of people do dedicate their time and all their efforts towards D&D and don't have a lot of time for other hobbies. I've realized you are able to manage it, especially if you're just a player. It's a lot easier to have other hobbies as well as do D&D. Now, when I first became interested in D&D, it was around 2015 and 2016. And when I mean interested, I mean I just got more details about what it was about, and it became slightly more attractive as something to do. But I didn't dive head first into the deep end of D&D at all. What happened was a couple of my friends actually started listening to a podcast called The Adventure Zone. Now, if you don't know The Adventure Zone, it is a father and his three sons. One of the sons is the dungeon master, and the dad and the two other brothers start a D&D adventure, one of the first pre-made D&D adventures called The Mines of Phandelver. And my friends really enjoyed this podcast. They said it was really funny and that we should look into getting into D&D. Now, I was very skeptical when my friends brought this up to me. I feel like they brought it up and many of my friends were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, they immediately kind of wanted to try it. It was something interesting that they had heard about that was very similar to many of our hobbies. Yet I was the most skeptical. I still had heard weird things about it, and I wasn't super convinced that it was going to be a good time. I ended up listening to a few episodes of the same podcast that my friends had listened to, and it was fun. It was fun to listen to these guys play D&D, and I decided, sure, why not? Let's see if me and my friends can have the same amount of fun that these guys are having. So I started out as a player. I made a rogue. I actually don't even remember what the rogue's name was, but I made just a normal human rogue, and we played a total of, I think, 2 or 3 sessions in this world. And we didn't really do a whole lot. I believe we were level 1 or 3, not very high. Our DM had a certain rules around magic at the time, and there wasn't much magic usage. And overall, I wouldn't say it was the best experience, but enough funny things happened with my friends that I was interested, but didn't really know how to play it because my friends kind of stopped playing, or we couldn't get groups together. Of course, the bane of all D&D things, scheduling is a nightmare for D&D. If you're going to start getting into D&D, scheduling is going to be your worst nightmare by far. But anyways, that kind of fell through, and so while I had some experience and I continued listening to the Adventure Zone podcast, I didn't really play a whole lot of D&D. I remember I think I did a couple of one-shots, which are essentially adventures that you only have a character for once, one day, and that's it. That's the only time you play that character. But other than the couple of games that I had played with my friends and those couple of one shots, I didn't really have any experience other than that playing D&D. Fast forward a few years later to 2019, and now I am living with a friend. This is a friend that I had met at work who I didn't really know at the time when I started playing D&D at first. Now that I was living with him, we were still kind of like getting to know each other. We didn't have a long background, and one day he brought up that his friends were kind of interested in learning about D&D. And I said, "Oh, I know a little bit about it. I'm familiar-ish with the rules, and if you guys want to play a game, like I can get something called a one shot and we can play it, and if you guys are interested, we can do like a longer game." So I ended up being a DM very quickly. With very little player experience, I now had to jump into the DM world and get all of the DM materials and ideas and start looking for more inspiration on how to add things and make the worlds interesting. I also just decided to do a pre-made adventure because I couldn't come up with like this homebrew thing, but also trying to add my own items and homebrew elements into the campaign and figuring out what was balanced and what was not was certainly very exciting, but very overwhelming when I first started. But because those friends that I had made were interested in doing D&D, we had a good time playing D&D in person pretty regularly in 2019. People really got into the idea of what we were doing and the campaign that we were running. If you're curious about the campaign we ran the Princes of the Apocalypse campaign, which is this book right here, and we ran it with a total of 7 players and me, the DM, so 8 of us total. After the campaign was said and done, one of my friends commissioned an artist to kind of create all of our characters, as well as one character that I made and I had the party help. So this is my character right here, and then the rest are some of my friends' characters. Get a little bit closer so you can see each of them. And in the middle right there you can see a floating sword, is because they had a pretty bad encounter with the sword in one of their first games that they played. A flying sword really did a number on their confidence going forward, so that is why a sword is in the middle of this beautiful piece of artwork. And I also have this tiny little mini that was given to me as a gift from one of my friends. Don't know if I can get it to focus. There we go. Focused. This is what my character kind of looked like. He was a necromancer that was also obsessed with like gardening and plants and creating new plant life as well. Shout out to the artist if you didn't see his signature that made the picture for me and my friends. His name is Josh Will. So if you are in need of your D&D characters being drawn, highly recommend. It was a very nice gift from my friend and I enjoy having it here with me in Japan. I should mention, I believe I said I was the DM. The DM is the dungeon master, or the person essentially that controls the game. They kind of tell the story, have the backgrounds of all of the character as well as the world and adventure that they're playing in. They kind of guide the players and give them ways to play the game. They should kind of give direction to the players, but also let them exercise their free will and give them interesting ways and reward them for doing things that are fun, exciting, and interesting, as well as if they roll well. Now, there's a lot of technicalities that go into D&D with the dice rolling and what you add, and sometimes you subtract numbers and things like that. But overall, you essentially, high numbers good, low numbers bad, medium numbers mixed, or, fine. But being a DM in 2019 for the first time with basically no experience, I was having a pretty good time. I was learning pretty rapidly. I started picking up more D&D podcasts and materials and figuring out what I needed to kind of create and do to become a better DM. What were the type of players that I had at my table? What kind of adventure did they want to go on? Did they want a battle heavy thing? Did they want a story heavy? What type of detail should I include or remove from the book because they won't be interested in it? And so I did my best to craft that for this group of friends that I played D&D with, and it was going swimmingly until COVID hit. Now, when COVID first hit, it was, I think, a weird time for everybody, but we didn't know that it was going to last so long. So we were like, all right, well, we can't do our games like we normally do. we'll put it off because this COVID thing is going to last a little bit, but we can probably start it back up again in April because COVID came in March, really largely to America. And then April came around and it was still here, and then May was here and it was still here, and then June. And I think it got to August before we were like, all right, let's just set up an online version. Like, let's get everybody on their computers and just play the game online because we want to play, but it's so hard to get together and everybody's worried about COVID. So we're going to play D&D online. Which you can do, and I think that there are DMs that might prefer to do it online because they have a lot more maybe in front of them, and they don't have to hide as much behind a just small area. They kind of have their whole setup that they can have and do things better. But personally, I like doing in-person DMing a lot better than online. Now that I've been DMing for quite a bit, I prefer doing in person, but I definitely can do online, and I think that there's benefits to both. Having different tabs open and just being able to click on each individual one for information that I need very quickly is very nice. I feel like it's a little bit easier to do combat online, but the magic, the feeling, being able to kind of set the tone of the room, I feel like is just so much nicer just for me as a DM in person than just kind of playing music online for people to listen to through Discord. Or it's just a lot easier to set up this ambiance and vibe and feeling, as well as do certain types of voices. Are they going to be picked up by the mic? It's a lot easier to just portray things in person than online. So with the Prince of the Apocalypse campaign, we ended up finishing the campaign online. We did do some hybrid sessions where some people would come and some people would not come, and we split it up so less people would have to be in the same room. And that also slightly worked, but we were kind of all new at what we were doing and trying to figure it out. So the Princes of the Apocalypse campaign was really an opportunity for us to all learn how to play the game, run the game, and figure out what we wanted for our characters and what would make future games more interesting. After finishing that game, we decided that while it was fun having me as the DM and 7 players, it also took a lot of time. Whenever there was combat, you'd have to adjust accordingly so everybody would kind of get a shot, but that in turn makes the combat much longer, and then certain people aren't doing things for a long period of time, and then you need visuals for each thing. It just becomes a lot, so we decided it would be better to kind of split up the parties and have them become smaller groups to play. So the group that I currently DM for, we moved on to our second campaign, The Curse of Strahd, which is a very popular vampire one. COVID kind of, it's still going on, but people started becoming less wary of it. We started, wearing masks, making sure we were getting tested before the games, and we would still get together when we first started The Curse of Strahd. And we played all the way up until I decided to come here to Japan. And now we've had to switch back to that online model because obviously I cannot be there in person to DM The Curse of Strahd while I'm here. So yeah, we're currently in the middle of that campaign right now. There is another group that also has the Icewind Dale campaign. We have currently put that one, I believe, on a hiatus. It's just been very difficult scheduling wise. Even when I was back in the States, and now that I'm here in Japan, it's even harder to get that group specifically together to play. But there are so many things that you can add to these pre-made adventures that were made by Wizards of the Coast to put into your own D&D games. I look forward to the day that I can kind of create a whole universe of my own homebrew things, but that is a lot of work and time to put into something that I'm not necessarily sure I have the skills to do right now. So yeah, I recommend, if you are at all interested in D&D, if any of this video has sounded interesting, if you're interested in Magic, playing a role-playing game in any form, I recommend trying out D&D just once. Try a one-shot adventure. Try that Mines of Phandelver adventure. It's a beginner adventure that the people that essentially license D&D have created as like a beginner adventure for people to go towards. There are ways for you to join online groups. There are many ways that you can kind of try out D&D. There's a movie that just recently came out that's based on D&D, not exactly how it's played because it doesn't show the players, it's like the characters, but anyways, there are many ways that you can start to get interested in D&D. You can do what I did and start listening to a podcast. I highly recommend The Adventure Zone. You can also listen to Dimension 20 or Critical Role. Dimension 20 is a little bit shorter form, but they also have like longer campaigns. Critical Role, I would say, is a good recommendation, but only if you're willing to put in a lot of time and if you don't mind jumping in while they've already done a lot of episodes. They have campaign 1, 2, and they are currently in the middle of 3 right now. And there are thousands of hours of content of Critical Role. I haven't even watched, I decided not to watch their first season, and I watched their second season, and I'm currently watching their third season live with them. But those are good ways to kind of get you introduced to the systems of D&D, especially when it is entertaining people trying to entertain you by playing D&D. It really shows you what D&D is capable of doing and what characters can do, the mechanics of the game, kind of learning it, the basics of it, or at least getting some semblance of what people that play D&D actually do. But yeah, that's going to be it for this week, guys. Thanks for going on this journey with me of D&D, listening to another one of my hobby videos. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any comments related to D&D, my videos in general, maybe you have a suggestion for what I should talk about in the future, leave it down in the comments down below. If you like hearing my stupid face talk, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. But that's all for today, guys. Really appreciate you once again, and I'll see you guys again next time. Peace.